We will start. Thank you everybody for joining Building Your Dream Squat Practice webinar. And we've got an amazing lineup of speakers. First of all, we are going to talk all about finance, and we have got Andy Acton from Frank Taylor and Associates. Andy's got lots and lots of experience. He's also a public speaker. He covers a lot of topics about leadership, management, marketing. He's the director and co-owner of FTA Finance, an award-winning healthcare finance broker. So thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. Lovely to have you here. And I'm going to start off with asking you some cracking questions about finance, which we get asked a lot from our clients who are planning to open a squat practice. So on my screen, as you could see, our first question is, what are the initial startup costs involved in setting up a squat practice?
This is a little bit what's the length of a piece of string, Saba, because it really does come down to what sort of practice you want, where it is, and what finish you want. So as a bracket, let's just take a 2 surgery practice as a start point, which is a decent start point. It's going to probably be somewhere between 200 and 400,000 pounds in that range. But what people need to do is they need to look at the minimum requirements to get open. So don't get carried away with designing out this 4 or 5 surgery practice. And I'm sorry, Murray, they shouldn't fit out five surgeries on day one, as much as it would be good for you. What they should do is kind of get 1 surgery fitted out, get it all plumbed and wired, and make sure that it's fit for purpose, so they can add those extra surgeries as they go. Starting out in the early days, it's not just about the startup cost of getting your environment right. You are going to have legal costs. You might have a lease to be negotiated on the property side. You're going to have some marketing costs that go with it as well. You might have some pre-opening marketing costs in terms of Facebook ads, Google. So it's not just about kind of what you're spending within the premises. It's bigger than that. And I think for me, budget. Work out what your plan is and create a budget, create a forecast, and understand what your costs are. As a general rule, projects tend to overrun by about 10%. So whatever you think you're going to spend, and Bobby's already nodding because he's got the scars for this, but generally whatever you think you're going to spend, you spend more just because life, that's what happens. But as a guide, 200 to 400 for a 2 surgery practice is kind of where you want to be, but it does come down to what sort of quality of finish are you looking for.
Perfect, thank you so much. We'll move on to our next question. So how can we effectively manage cash flow within the squat practice, especially during the initial phases of operation when revenue may not be great?
So you can buy an established dental practice and you get revenue on day one, because that's you're buying the goodwill, patient base, the money flows into the business. With a squat, that's not the case. The key tip I would give anybody if they're starting a squat practice is your costs are going to burn immediately and you have no revenue. So the way you can help yourself is by starting your marketing 6 months before you open the practice. So tell people you're coming, get your website up and running, get your socials up and running. If somebody's in need of urgent dental care and they've got toothache, they're going to find a dentist today. But most of us might go to the dentist every 6, 9 or 12 months. So if you knew there was a local practice opening in your area, you may register or express interest before they're open, because it's just going to be convenient for you. So what you might be able to do is actually, on the day that you actually open, you may already have a pipeline of patients on your books before you open. So I think start your marketing really early. And then also just accept that you're going to be running on a skinny budget to start with. So you may have a receptionist stroke nurse to start with. And in time, you may move to a model where you have a receptionist and you have a nurse. But just keep your costs as keen as possible. The majority of squats is kind of between sort of 9 and 18 months to break even. So you are going to be running at a cash deficit. So in terms of managing the cash flow, when you arrange your funding, it's also important, if they'll provide it, to get a working capital facility. And that's a very posh term, which means an overdraft. And what you'll do is you'll dip into your overdraft in the early days, because you'll be using the bank's money to get you through. And then as your patients start to come on board and they start paying for their dental fees, that will bring you out of your overdraft, and then you'll be cash positive. But I think for me, you can't start your marketing early enough. Make sure people know you're coming. Make sure there's this buzz about your practice. What you don't want to do is open your door on day one and then start telling people about it.
Yeah, that's a really great tip, Andy, because I think when you're building up a squat, that's the last thing you think about is marketing
Yeah.
it. You look at, oh, what about the finances? Have I got enough money? The build work stresses you out as well, because nowadays it's hard to find good builders. And then there's all the other aspects, and you just totally, I'm guilty of that. I totally forget about marketing and social media when it comes to that. So thank you so much for that. The next question we've got is, can you provide guidelines on how we can create a realistic financial forecast and budget plans?
So on this, I can provide a cash flow forecast to anyone who's on the webinar. If they want one, I can send one through to you, and you can share it. And what you really need to do is you need to understand what your core costs are going to be. So your rent, your rates, your light, your heat, they then need to be scheduled out on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. And what that will do is that will start to focus your attention on when there's going to be the peaks and troughs on the cash. So there's going to be like a net inflow and a net outflow, and that's going to show you on a monthly basis whether you're kind of in the red or in the black. So that's an important start point. Work out details like, what are you going to pay somebody? Are you going to pay them £12 an hour, £14 an hour, £15 an hour? Put that into your budget. So don't just take kind of general ideas of what you think the costs are going to be. Really go into each line item and understand what those costs are. But also talk to other people. I mean, we've got Bobby with us today. Bobby's kind of living and breathing this, and there's Bobby and there's a bunch of other people. And people are really helpful and kind and nice. Sabi, you've been through it as well. You've got practice. Talk to other people that have been there.
Yeah.
People will help and share. They'll give you the answers. But really obsessing about the small details and not taking general advice is important. But also make sure you get the correlation between your income and some of your variable costs right as well. So your labs and your materials are going to be related to the dentistry that you deliver. So make sure that you get that right. If you're going to be doing, say, Invisalign treatments, understand what banding you sit with a line, so you know what your Invisalign costs are going to be, and accept that there's going to be some upfront costs, and that income might come a bit later down the line. So really kind of digging into what that looks like is important. But like I say, for anybody on the call, I'm happy to share with you a cash flow forecast template. And in the early days, just play around with it a little bit and put some numbers in and just see what the effect is on the numbers you have.
Can I just add one point to that? I would just say, sorry, I was going to say a really good starting point for associates, especially when they're about to start thinking about this, is actually just to start understanding their personal finances and also start working out what their daily rates are as an associate. So actually knowing what they gross and what type of work they do, because that will have an impact on what you're able to produce in your own practice. There's no point opening a squat, if you're grossing, £500 a day, you know what I mean? If you have to understand what you're capable of doing, and then, being able to upskill, or if your business plan is to have other associates doing that work for you, then fair enough. But if you're going to be the primary dentist that's earning in that practice, you should have an understanding, a really good starting point to start working out what you can achieve or what your daily rates, hourly rates can be, is by working out what you do as an associate at the moment.
Thank you for that, Bobby. Right, moving on. So, what finance alternatives are available for individuals without assets or even a favorable credit score?
And so without assets isn't a huge problem. And by without assets, I assume that the person here is referring to, I don't have any security to offer the bank, so it's going to be an unsecured facility. We're in a very good time for people wanting to fund squat practices. The banks are getting more generous towards squat practices. So at the moment, we have banks out there that will lend up to £250,000 per dentist. So if you're doing it in a partnership, that'd be £500,000. You need to put down a 30% deposit. It used to be kind of 50% or more. They'll lend the money over 10 years, possibly 15 years. The interest rates are slightly higher than it would be for an established practice, but they're not horrendous. It's about 3.5% above base rate. There's also no early repayment charges as well, which is quite important, because that means that if you want to refinance down the line, you can do so, and it's not going to cost you a fortune. So the support's out there, and you don't necessarily need assets for that. That would effectively be an unsecured facility. You provide a director's guarantee, but that would be it. So the conditions are good. with regard to the favourable credit score, unfortunately, if you have an unfavourable credit score, banks don't like it, because the way credit scores work is they kind of give an indicator of your past behaviour that kind of gives a pattern of what might happen in the future. So if you've got a bad credit score, it means that something's happened in your past, and the bank sees that that behaviour could repeat itself. So what you really need to do is you can get completely non-status loans that don't look at your credit score. In the old days, those people were called loan sharks. So it'd be a very expensive loan. You miss a payment and they're going to come around and ask for it and might not be particularly polite about asking for it. Not a great route to go down. If you don't have a great credit score, what I'd suggest is find out what went wrong, find out how long it's going to be on your credit score for, perhaps just accept you might have to wait a year or two to get a clean credit history and then start again, because these things, they do come off your credit history, and during that time save some money, build your cash, build your deposit, and then go when you're ready. But you might have to accept that you might have to wait for a year or two.
Perfect, thank you. One quick question that one of our clients had is, how long does a finance take in order to go through approximately?
So it depends on the complexity of the case. At the quickest end, it's a couple of weeks, but it could take 4 to 6 weeks. It's not that long as a process. The caveat to this is how well prepared you are and what information you give over. So if you're able to present a good quality business plan with a financial forecast, that the loan broker can use that and move quickly. So that would be the 2 weeks end. If you haven't done any of those things and you have to do that for the application, then it could take 4 to 6 weeks. But on that, what I'd say is you should never be producing a business plan and a forecast for a bank. It should be for you. You then share it with the bank, because if you've just done it for the bank, you don't really understand it and you don't own it. So create the plan for you, create the forecast for you, and then share it with the bank. Because with the greatest respect, the bank could afford to lose £400,000 if it goes wrong. You as a dentist, it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt badly. So make sure you understand your plan and your numbers, and then use that to go to the bank, as opposed to just create it for the bank.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andy, for that. And if anybody is online, has any questions about finance, please put them in the chat box and we will ask Andy. Now we have got Murray from Anglian Dental. Murray is the head of sales and marketing, and Murray's built some very beautiful dental practices. I've currently seen some of the Scott practices that he's done, and they look absolutely smashing. So Murray, thank you so much for joining us on the webinar. And I've got some questions to ask you as well. My first question is, what are the price ranges of dental chairs at the moment?
Thanks, Arba. Appreciate the invite, and it's quite humbling to be alongside these Bobby and Andy, who are, famous and renowned in the industry. So feeling a bit out of my depth, but really appreciate the invite. Yeah, it's a good question, this is, and one we get asked a lot. And alluding to something Andy said earlier, there's a huge variance with this, but I always encourage dentists who are starting out just to, when they come to choose their equipment, which is probably, this question is perhaps generally about dental equipment and the furniture, because whilst the chair is an important and a large ticket item, it is just a part of an overall jigsaw. But it comes down to value, I think, with this, because there's a huge range. I mean, just as a ballpark, you get entry-level equipment, which is going into the sort of the corporates and perhaps the NHS side of the industry. And a chair would be about 12 grand, 13 grand, maybe a bit up, bit down, depending on specifications. That would be your kind of your entry level for a good quality. There is like another step down in the market in terms of price point, where, equipment coming from sort of the Far East, and, that will probably start about 8 grand. But for a mainstream brand, for example, Belmont, ADEC, Cavo, Zeronas, the entry levels around that 12, 13. That can scale right up to 35, 40. So by the time you've got an all singing, all dancing, it's obviously 3-4 times the price. So the right chair is often about what patients are coming in, what treatments you're going to be offering, and what's important to you as a clinician. And often there's a mix as well. So it might not be the same chair in every room. It might be the same brand, but different packages. I would really recommend considering a few key items for the specifications. And whilst finance is very important when you're starting a squat. There are some key things which have a lot of value in them. For example, comfy upholstery, making sure patient comfort is top, because they won't notice how fancy your cabinetry is or what suction pump you've got, but they will notice how comfortable it is when they get their bum on that chair for the first time. So definitely invest in that. And comfy upholstery, it might be £1,000, £500, but it's well worth it. Another thing I'd recommend considering is things like an electric motor, integrated scalers. Again, there's a cost to that, but the time that will save you in treatments, crown preps, using speed increasing handpieces, it's a real no-brainer. And once someone started using that, they often wouldn't want to go back. So it comes down to every individual case. And I would say talk to someone who knows the industry, knows the options, tell them your experience, and go to showrooms, go and see what's available, try it out. Don't buy online. It's really important. Go to the dental shows, actually see it, understand how it's made, understand the support network behind it, because dental equipment is only as good as its support. You've got to have it backed up by a reputable engineering company, and it's got to have heritage behind it. It's got to be a quality product. In the day, you're using this 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Having it reliable is absolutely critical. Generally, for a fit out, we have this tool which we call we call it a banking budget, and it looks at what you need in a surgery. So it'd be your chair, your X-ray, your suction pump, your compressor, your plate scanner, your autoclave, your sterilizer, kind of all the basic equipment you need, because the chair is just one piece. And if someone wants a template, then more than happy to send it to them. And this is just very simple calculator where they can put in the number of chairs, starting off with the sort of mid, low, high-end specs, and then like a checklist of everything you might need from a dental equipment point of view, just to get up and running. Because as I say, the chair is a large part of it, but it is only a jigsaw. It's one piece in overall. So yeah, I hope that helps. Perhaps quite a varied answer.
I love these calculators. I've seen one on FTA as well, website, where you can calculate how much finance you could get. And I've seen one that you mentioned, you've got one as well. I think it's really, really useful tool, and it really helps people to get an idea of, how to budget and what they're looking for. So absolutely love the calculator ideas, and thank you for sharing that. Our next question is, what is the wait time on dental equipment at the moment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you're asking me now, not about 12 months ago, because it was a bit of a different story. And it's actually a good time. I think Andy said it earlier, I fully agree. Now is still a good time to start a squat. Some of the challenges which we were seeing with equipment lead times going back 12 months, I wouldn't say are completely over, but majority of them are much better. There were some real challenging situations, really difficult, where lead times were changing a lot. But as we stand today, in 28th of February, we're in quite a good position from a lead time point of view. Most brands are back to how they were, pre-COVID. It's taken a long time. So most brands would be somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks for equipment. It is still important to engage early with a trusted advisor, because there are a few wacky things out there. There's a few circuit boards still waiting for chips, and upholstery can be on fairly long lead times if you want particular finishes and colours. So it's very worth starting those conversations early, making sure you're clear on what you want, so you're not running into problems with rooms that are waiting for chairs, which has happened. So
good.
I would definitely recommend. Can't start too early. It does take time to choose a chair. And people think, just right, this week I'm going to choose my chair and choose my equipment. But getting the right spec, getting the right colours, getting the right finishes, it does take time. And going to showrooms, holding meetings, getting quotations, etc. So I'll probably allow 3 weeks for that process. So do engage early, get around some showrooms, talk to people who you've talked to, friends and colleagues, and talk to some trusted advisors in the industry. There's a lot of help out there, and it's there to be used.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. At what stage should the client contact you in order to place an order for the equipment?
Yeah, good question. This is because the equipment choice will impact a lot in the practice, and perhaps it's something which is overlooked a bit in the industry, in that when you come to lay out a practice, we do a lot of design, so designing the layouts and the general arrangements of the practice, how where the window might be, where the door will be, what side the door is on, where the cabinetry is going to be, the nurse flow, the patient flow, where the screen is going to be, how the X-ray will access the chair, making sure it's going to reach, how long your suction pipe's going to be, make sure it's strong enough. A lot of those questions come back to what dental equipment you choose. And it's quite important to get into that early on. So not knowing the full spec, but for example, if you're having an over-the-patient delivery system, probably about 20%, 25% of the surgeries in the UK have over-the-patient, which is where you have an arm coming across the chair. The design of a surgery with an over-the-patient chair would be completely different to a design of a surgery which has a rear mount delivery unit or a side mount. Now that affects the door position. That then affects the builder's plan. It then affects where your services are going. So I strongly recommend early on, definitely before any tools are out and any ground's broken, get that choice nailed out, get that equipment finalized so you know where your door's going to be, you know how the room's going to work, because it's very easy just to assume a dental chair is a dental chair, but it really isn't. And if you're doing this, you want to do it properly. You want to think through flow of the room, and that will impact all the services. It'll impact, as I've said, a lot of things. But until you've gone through that process of choosing your equipment, it's very hard to say that. So my advice always is to plan it, get all the plans down, know exactly what equipment you're going to have, know the room layouts. The whole practice layout needs to be confirmed and ideally frozen before any works are started on site. You don't want to be moving doors and moving walls and moving pipe work. We just had a project fairly recently where plans were done a bit on the fly, shall we say, and the plans weren't that accurate and ended up with the service position having to be moved. So floors were latex and concrete over, and we brought the chair templates along to position them and found actually the chair was only about that far away from the wall. So then the floors to come up and the service have to be moved. So if the process had been worked through at that point, where plans had been signed off before his build had started, it would have been a bit smoother. So can't start too early.
Okay, and Murray, we've got a question here from one of our participants who says, hello, Murray, are you able to purchase equipment overseas?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, was someone going to say something?
Don't recommend it.
Yeah, I would agree, because the support
is
critical. Any equipment, there'll be a warranty. It needs to be honoured by the installer. Us as a dealer, for example, Belmont or ADEC, we have to honour a warranty, a dealership agreement, and part of that is providing warranty backup. The last thing you want is your equipment to go wrong after 12 months or 24 months, whatever, and then you can't get it repaired. So I would always recommend talking to a local engineering company. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend sending overseas or buying overseas.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, what services does Anglian Dental offer? Because I know you guys do design, you do the build, you do the equipment, you do lots of different type of services. So what is it exactly that you cover?
Yes, thank you. So Anglian Dental started as an engineering company. So we're in third generation now. My granddad, who passed away just a few months ago, he started it in North London, Winchmore Hill, in 1991 as an engineer. And that is our foundation. We're an engineering company, and we've got a good sized engineering team now. We cover London, the home counties, and the Midlands. Have about 19 engineers. But our growth over the years has been our customers wanting us to do more. So we moved from engineering, repairs, call outs, breakdowns in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s into selling equipment and doing the fit out. So the chairs, the suction pumps, the cabinetry. My brother and myself joined sort of 2010, 2011, and since then, with lots of demands have been, well, can you help us do the building works? Can you design it? Because what we're finding is, and we still do this from time to time, is we go to site and we're supplying the equipment and the client's got their own contractor, and we're more than happy to work alongside them. But there have been some challenges with that, and what we were finding is we were getting to site to install and things weren't in the right place. Situations were happening where we turn up to install and we couldn't install because of services wrong, etc. So the last few years we've been doing probably more in the design and the build side. So, and these days we would do a full project, whether it's a refurbishment or just turning a staff room into a surgery, or whether it's a complete squat, we would design it, do the building control drawings, submit all the applications into the planning if needed, list the building consent, and do all the GAs, the technical drawings. We then fit it out, build it. So we've got quite a large team now of subcontractors and our own guys. Anything from decorations to flooring to HVAC to structural works, and then cabinetry, dental equipment, the suction pumps, chairs, X-rays, compressors, reception desks, a fair amount of bespoke joinery we do, and then the after sales service, the servicing, which is our core.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andy. Sorry, Murray. Sorry about that. So thank you so much for answering those questions. Again, if any of you would have any other, oh, we've got another question. Is it mandatory to have a dental chair serviced annually?
Good,
We get
interesting
that
one.
asked about as well.
Yeah, we do. Bobby, what do you say to that?
If you want your equipment working in the long term, then yes, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I fully agree.
The thing is with it, I mean, this is an important point to right, especially with the question about overseas purchasing equipment as well. Downtime in a squat is horrific. So if your surgery is out of action and you've only got one surgery running, and if that chair's out of action for 2 or 3 days, whatever it is, you're making no money whatsoever. So, you know, for the short term, you know, what you might save, that few £1,000s, you know, to me, it just does not make sense whatsoever. And that goes through with servicing and maintaining your equipment and making sure that your team are well, you know, well equipped and well trained to manage all the equipment, you know, all the way through decon. Because like I said, you just don't want downtime. It's not worth the headache, the stress whatsoever.
Yeah, I fully agree. There's the downtime. There's also the aspect of equipment, how long it will last. And we see it from an engineering point of view. If a chair is serviced every year, that chair will last a lot longer. You'll probably get 15, 20 years out of it. Whereas if it's run into the ground and never serviced, you'll be changing that chair after, you know, 8, 9, 10 years. So it's twofold. It's that's exactly what we said, fully agree with that, but it'll also last longer. But from a CQC perspective, and Saba would know this more than me, the requirement is am I right in saying it's as per manufacturer's guidelines? Is that
yes,
is that correct?
absolutely right. I was just going to say that because that was the next question. So it's manufacturer's guidelines.
Yeah, and most manufacturers these days, it would vary, but most would say it should have an annual service kit, and that is worth doing. You get all the bits which fail and break after a year. So refer back to the manufacturer for the chair you've got, but most will be annually.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Murray. And we have got Bobby now from Squat Success. Bobby's been teaching dentists how to set up their dream practices. He's also opened Avenue Dental Practice a few months ago. And since then, he's been teaching groups of dentists. One thing I love about Bobby is he talks about the whole process of building your dream squat. So from business plan to the building processes to the marketing strategy, he goes through every single thing in a lot more details. So thank you so much, Bobby, for joining us. And we have got some questions to ask you. So tell us about Squat Success. I've heard all about it. I've seen you all over social media. You've become a little star. So tell us what Squat Success is all about.
Yeah, so Squat Success was actually born, you know, by accident. So when I set my practice up, I had a terrible experience. It was horrific. You know, every aspect of it was very, very difficult. Even though I had mentors and, you know, people that I could ask a lot of questions to, it was too much to keep going to them. And, you know, what I realized was afterwards is that a lot of dentists go through the same. A lot of us have the same problems, same issues. So after I set the practice up, I shared a lot of the journey on social media, and I had a lot of dentists asking me, you know, how did you do this exactly? So I started teaching dentists exactly what we were doing and exactly what it takes to set a successful practice up. So we've actually been running a bit longer than a few months. So we're at 13 months now. But yeah, the practice has been incredibly successful. So we're just putting our second surgery in now. But even that, our first surgery has taken an absolute hammering. So it's a long overdue. But yeah, so we teach dentists the whole process of exactly what it takes to start a practice successfully.
I'm on mute, so I'm going to unmute myself. Right, my next question. What tips would you give someone who's planning on opening a dental squat in 2024?
Yeah, so quite a lot, really. So I'd say number one is the planning. You know, do not rush it. Yeah, that whole aspect we talked about earlier with Andy, especially about the business plan, building that out properly, that is massive. You cannot rush that whatsoever. And you've got to make sure that business plan is really, really applicable to you and what you want to achieve out of your practice. Because if you get that right, the rest of it just follows through. Second thing I would say is marketing is key. Again, we touched on that earlier. The earlier you start that, the better, the more successful you would be. You know, unfortunately, I read a comment on one of the Facebook groups recently about somebody had opened a spot recently, and they're not seeing very many patients whatsoever. And, it's a terrible situation to be in. But a lot of that is actually really avoidable. There is no reason why you can't open a squat and have a waiting list of patients. There is an absolute abundance of patients out there at the moment who want access to good quality private dentistry, but it all comes back down to your planning. And then the third thing I would say is, if you're thinking about going down practice ownership journey, start learning about all the things that you don't know. So that will be all the things to do with leadership, management, compliance, how to manage a team, all of the kind of things that you don't learn as an associate. And a lot of those you have to just learn as you go along when you're setting up, practice. It's very, very different when you make that transition from going from an associate to being a practice owner. But there's lots of things you can do to build those skills before you open.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing those amazing tips. The next question is, what is the most important aspect of building your first squat?
Yeah, I think the most important aspect is, number one, having that plan, and number two, managing finances. That's one of the biggest things. So I think one of the biggest pitfalls, again, it just comes back to something we talked about earlier, is cash flow. That's where I see a lot of dentists fall into trouble because they haven't been able to manage their cash flow appropriately. So knowing numbers is massive. And if you're not good at that, either get good at it or have a really good accountant, or people that are around you that can help you with that. But you've really, really got to understand the financials of the practice, super, super well for it to be successful. Cash flow is mega, mega important. The practice is everything. It's incredibly expensive to run a practice in this day and age. But you can manage that in lots of different ways that have been touched upon earlier.
Yeah, I think even with my recent squat, I did suffer when it came to cash flow, because I think all the design element aspects, everything I got done at the way. And then I totally forgot to put some money aside when it came to running off the dental practice for the first 3 months. So it was literally applying for another loan to, keep us at a level where we could run for 3 months without having to worry about the cash flow. So yeah, I think personally, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with, because they take out finance for equipment, they take out finance for everything, but I don't think the buffer money is put on the side for after the launch of the practice. So I think, 100%.
Could not agree with you more. One of the first things dentists always ask me is, how much does it cost to start up a practice? Nobody ever asks how much it costs to run a practice.
Yes.
And it's important when you're taking out your loan, you can account for that.
Yeah.
When you're drawing your finance, so you've got a pool of money to lean on for those first 6 months. It's one of the biggest things that I teach.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And even like we've touched a lot about marketing. I think even when I speak to clients and I say, look, start your marketing, and they're like, we haven't even got the keys yet. How do you expect us to start marketing the practice? We don't even know, and all this kind of stuff. And yes, it's great if as early you start, but again, there's so many marketing companies out there. And then I think what people struggle with, where do we start in marketing? So sometimes I feel like, there should be literally a checklist. So, opening social media accounts, websites, Google ads, Facebook ads, because there's so many marketing companies out there, and you really get confused. What is it that you need to prioritize? Do you start by advertising, or spending on paid ad first? Do you start with your website? What are some of the things that you do? And there's also like, after opening my second squat, there's also like little things you could do, like get the practice on the directory on Google Map, and very small things like that, which I believe that makes a big difference as well, because it shows patients where you're located and things. So
yeah, I mean, we opened with a list of patients, and I'm happy to share exactly what we did. So number one, landing page, and then we ran a small campaign on social, so paid ads, just marketing that a new practice was opening. And just through doing that, and that was on a £5 budget a day for around about 4 to 5 months before we opened, and out of that we generated around about 200 leads.
Great.
The key thing is though, keeping them warm during that time. So then you take your team on board, who then can start speaking to these people, having conversations with them, building rapport with them. So when the time comes to open, even though it's going to be a delayed amount of time, you've still been in touch and they remember that. And then you can go back to them with certain things, promotions, offers, whatever you're going to be running, when you open your practice. Just to give you an example, one of the girls who's doing a training with me at the moment, she's about to open soon, and she's sitting on 900 leads. through their pre-marketing campaign, which is incredible.
Well, that's great. I wonder what marketing campaign she's running. Right, we have got another question. It says, hi Saba, how much would be a good budget to work when it comes to advertising? I'll let Bobby answer that. I'm not a marketing guru.
Yeah, so it varies from area to area and exactly what type of advertising you want to be doing. So it comes back down to your business plan on what type of patients you want. So if you want implant patients, it's going to be a very different style of marketing to what you're going to be doing for, say Invisalign patients. But I'm happy to share what we spend. We spend, anything between £2,000 to £4,000 a month on paid marketing, and that's split across different avenues. So that's Google, Facebook, Instagram, local marketing. So lots of different things you can do. But one thing I would say is don't underestimate it, because when you're starting out as a practice, you need a big marketing budget because ultimately you need patients in your chair. But what I see a lot of dentists is they get scared that they don't want to spend a lot on marketing. And when you tell them how much it costs, they start to shut down and think, no, I can't afford that, I can't spend that. But what you fail to realize is you got to look at the return that you're getting off the back of it. So if you're spending, £2,500, £3,000 a month on paid marketing, but that's generating you £30,000 to £40,000 worth of revenue, then it makes complete sense. But unfortunately, when you're starting out, you don't know that because you've not seen it yet.
Yeah, another great question that came to my mind is like a lot of the time when associate is opening a brand new dental practice, they're usually working as well the other days because obviously they wouldn't be generating a lot of income in their current practice. So how much split do you think that it should be, like in terms of days? How many days should they start working in their own practice compared to being associate at another practice?
Yeah, so I started with 3 days in my own practice and kept my associate job for 2 days a week. You don't want to keep it too narrow because you want to give flexibility to your patients so they can come, on different days. But ultimately, it comes down to a balance of cash flow. So as soon as if you know what it's going to cost you to run the practice, and then you know how much you make as an associate, you can work out then on those days how much money I can generate, and is that enough to float me through that period? And then as and when your practice starts to earn enough money, you don't need those associate days, you drop them.
And how realistic do you think it is that the associate can start taking a decent wage home? How long do you think?
Not as long as what people might always tell you. So, my experience, within a year, we've done quite well. So, the practice is making good money, and that's still off a single surgery, without putting in others. But I expect a year of hardship, and then after that things will settle down.
Perfect, thank you so much. I've got another question which is from Harriet. I'm based in northeast of England. Are there any recommended dental architects here? Would love to work with Anglian Dental, but they are way too far. Murray, I'm sure you could do something in northeast of England.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps if I'll chat with, was it Harriet or
Perfect.
after and sort something out? Yeah.
I'll get the contact details. Perfect. Thank you so much. Right, over to my turn. So compliance. What are the requirements of a registered manager? So when you are opening a dental practice, you need to register as a registered manager. And I always recommend the dentist or the principal to register as a registered manager. A lot of the time I get asked, oh, shall I recruit a practice manager and get them to be a registered manager, or shall I do it myself? And there are sometimes I come across some people who say, no, I want my practice manager to be registered manager. We always recommend, being the practice principal and the owner, that you start the registered manager application and you be it, and then later on you can change it. In terms of the requirements, again, it's your qualification, your CPD courses, what knowledge do you have when it comes to running a dental practice? Have you managed a team before? So these are some of the things that CQC look for in order, to make a decision if you would be a suitable registered manager. Make sure you know all your policies and procedures.
17 when I joined.
Sorry, I don't know. Is somebody saying something? No? Okay.
Mm.
Right. The next question is delay in processing application.
Probably
So,
is.
sorry.
Mm.
I think it's Who is that? Let's have a look.
Interesting. Huh?
There we go. I've muted Lisa. Sorry, Lisa, I've muted you. Right. The next question was delay in processing CQC application. So one of the problems we're currently having is there's a massive delay in processing CQC applications at the moment, just because, again, CQC is short of staff. So a lot of the application from August and September time are being processed at the moment. And we get asked a lot, Saba, how can we fast track the application? So one of the things that we do at Smart Dental Compliance and Training is, first of all, we will try to get as much information as possible in terms of, for example, if you've already got a running practice, and then we could do add allocation application form. That will be a lot more quicker than doing a brand new squat application form. Another thing is like financial viabilities and, getting a letter from the accountant saying that there would be a financial impact if you're not able to open at a certain timeline. So there are a couple of things that we try to work with our clients to do in order to fast track the application. But I always tell my clients, please guys, as soon as you get your keys, submit your CQC application, because there's no guarantee in terms of the timeline. I've had clients who've submitted application like 6 months ago and they're still waiting, and there's nothing that could be done. Like, we try our best to do everything from our side, but if there is a delay, there is a delay. So if there's not a delay on the chairs, Murray, there's a delay in CQC applications right now. So it's always something. Next question, what are the requirements of opening a squat practice? So obviously some of the things that I mentioned in my first question was, in order to, you need to make sure that there's somebody who's willing to become a registered manager and a nominated individual. They are fully aware of the policies and the procedures, the audits. You do have to have some sort of a basic compliance knowledge in order to pass the registered manager interview, because they do ask about, safeguarding, mental capacity. What would you do if there was a clinical complaint? How would you deal with it? Because in the beginning, there might only be two of you, so there might only be the dentist and the nurse. So again, you need to know who's going to be the buddy practice. You need to have a business continuity plan as well. So these are some of the requirements that you do need to have when you are opening the dental practice. Again, like, getting your fire risk assessments done, your Legionella, health and safety, disability, risk assessments are super important. People leave it last moment for the CQC to tell them that, oh, have you got a risk assessment in place? Once you submit the application and the application goes to the registered manager will send you a list of all the documentations that you require. So what we do at Smart Dental Compliance and Training, we've already got that list. So we send that list to our clients well in advance, so they've got everything in place. Because when CQC do email you asking for those documents, you've literally got 2 to 3 days to submit it. So if they've asked for, let's say, the RPA folder or the RPA service information or local rules, the turnaround time for that is minimum a week. So again, you wouldn't have enough turnaround time. And this is why we try to do everything well in advance, so you're fully prepared for when you are receiving those emails. And we process about 20 to 30 applications on a daily basis, whether it's dental or whether it's healthcare. So I think that's one of the good things, that we know exactly what you're going to get asked, and we will prepare you for that. And the last question, how would you prepare the site for an inspection? So before you're due to have an inspection, we'll come out with all the signs. We also have a checklist of what the practice needs on the day of the inspection. So like your medical emergency drugs, your oxygen, your defibrillator, your first aid, your color-coded mop and buckets. So we generally work off a checklist with our clients and make sure that everything in place. Again, we will help you with all the ordering as well. So we've got where you can order these things from, like blood spillage kit, your HSE poster as well. How do you register with the ICO? How do you register with HSE? So it's things like that. I think when you are starting up a squat practice, it can be really, really overwhelming. I found it very overwhelming when I was doing my second squat. First of all, because of the travel and the build work, and we had a bit of a dilemma with our builders who decided to leave halfway during the project. So we had to find new builders. So there's lots of things that can go wrong. So I think the areas that you're not quite sure about is always best to outsource that as much as you can. So this is what I always believe in, and I always tell my clients is try to outsource things. If you're not sure how to do compliance, get a compliance provider. If you're not sure, about in terms of the design, get a nice architect, get an interior designer. Again, if you don't know how to get loans, get in touch with a finance company, get as much guidance as you can, because I think that really helps. Because then what you can do is concentrate on providing that patient care rather than worrying about the other things. So that was a bit of my tips and the compliance session. I'm just going to have a look if there's any more questions. No, there's no more questions.
I've got a
Is there
question for you,
anything else?
Saba,
Yeah.
about the compliance side of things. So a couple of the dentists that I'm working with have been asking, can they submit their CQC application before their lease is signed? If they know the lease is kind of going ahead, but it's not been signed on the dotted line, but they want to get ahead of this, issue.
Yeah, they can. So what happens is when it comes to lease, I think you get head of terms first, and you sign the head of terms. So, and then after that, the lease is drawn based on the head of terms. So again, once you have signed the head of terms, 99% of the time the lease will go through. It's nothing. You can start your CQC application. Even before getting the keys, you've seen a property, start your CQC application, because what you could always do is you can contact them and say, look, this has happened, so can you pause my application? It's better to get your application paused or stopped than wait for, when the practice is done and you've still got 2-3 months left and you don't know when, your application is going to come through. So yes, you can do that. And do that. And it's best to do that.
Could I ask you a question, Saba?
Yeah, sure, Murray.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk at the moment about the need for washer disinfectors and potentially becoming mandatory. Is that something you're hearing, or?
Again, I am hearing that, but there is nothing that says it's definitely become mandatory. And I don't think it's something that they're going to make mandatory, because you've still got the ultrasonic, you've still got manual cleaning, which are as effective as washer disinfector. So I think, I don't think it's going to be mandatory at the moment. It is recommended and it is best practice. But again, I think from a cost point of view and a practicality point of view, especially, if you've got 2 surgery practice, you're going to struggle with the washer disinfector timings and how long it takes to, get through the instruments as well. So for squat practice, small squat practices like 1 to 2 surgery, I wouldn't recommend. But if you have got, if you're going to do implants, if you're going to do specialist dental treatments, then I would recommend getting a washer disinfector. But it's not mandatory under the HTM 0105 at the moment.
That's good. Could I ask Andy a question?
Yeah.
We often get asked, how's it best to finance a project, the split between the build works and the asset finance, like the equipment? Any pearls of wisdom?
So I think years ago, we'd have always pushed quite hard to said put as much on asset finance as possible. And the reason for that is that the security is the equipment. So it's fully unsecured. So from a personal risk point of view, having asset finance is better. But now the banks are relaxing a bit more and they're getting a bit more sensible in terms of supporting squats. And because it's unsecured facilities, bar, a personal guarantee, which typically you provide with asset finance as well. Because that's now kind of that argument has gone. I think there's a stronger case to get more finance on a commercial loan as opposed to asset finance. Only because in the early days, asset finance would typically be over 5 to 7 years, whereas a commercial loan would be over 10 to 15 years. And going back to Bobby's point about in the early days, everybody asks what it costs to set a practice up. Nobody says, what does it cost to run it? If you can keep your financing cost low, it means your monthly outgoings are going to be lower. It doesn't put you under so much financial pressure. So whereas it used to be go asset finance for the equipment, and that's still good for some of the equipment, but actually if you could get support from a bank on an unsupported basis without kind of security, and you can get over 10 or 15 years, that actually to me makes more sense because it's going to reduce your running costs, particularly if the bank will also give you a facility with no early repayment charge. You can then restructure your finances after a year or two. Because as Bobby was saying, you get a year in and it feels and looks way different than it did in the first few months, and things change quickly. So you want to kind of stay on your toes and be always thinking about what your finance facility looks like. So yeah, I think in the last year it's changed. I think a commercial
Mm.
loan actually is a pretty decent approach to take with some support of asset finance. Whereas I think if you would have been having this conversation 2 or 3 years ago, I don't think there was much out there on the commercial loan side. I think you'd have needed to lean heavily on asset finance.
Just
That's very
touching
interesting.
on the you're talking about refinancing. So this is another conversation that comes up with interest rates obviously being higher for squat practices.
Yeah.
But is it true that, you know, after a couple of years, once you're running practice, then you can refinance onto better rates?
Yeah, totally. So the primary difference of arranging a loan for an existing practice as opposed to squat is they're basically funding a business plan and the track record of a dentist. You know, what have you done as a dentist in an associate capacity? What's your gross? What are your own personal assets and liabilities and your income and expenditure? But 2 years in, everybody knows that first year is going to be slow to build. But by the time you get to the second year, it's going to be looking a bit better. So refinancing after year 2 or year 3, the banks are looking to say, actually, there is some goodwill now built up in this business. Therefore, the higher interest rate, you know, the 3.5% that you were being charged when it was a squat, may well come down to something like 2.5%, 2.75%. The only thing to bear in mind is there's always a cost when you change your facility. So there's going to be a new arrangement fee and there's going to be other costs in there. So sometimes it's worth waiting to make sure you kind of get that sweet spot where you've got that track record so the bank can see that you're doing well and they're going to give you a nice interest rate, as opposed to try and do it too quickly, get a slightly better interest rate, but then you have some costs. You might have a bank valuation fee and an arrangement fee. And what you save on an interest rate gets eaten up in front end fees. So it's a case of trying to assess the whole situation and not purely just focus on that interest rate.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions, guys?
No, I think I think just as an overview, I think it's a really exciting time. You know, we were talking before we kind of started that for me, I think squats coming into the market is good for dentistry. I think it's exciting. It broadens the pool for patients to access practices. I think independent dentists have a strong foothold and a place in dentistry. I think the support, you know, listening to Bobby and what Murray's got to offer and you on the compliance side, I think the services to support people getting into practice ownership have never been better. So people who are thinking about it, it's a much easier thing to do than it ever used to be. But don't get me wrong, it's still bloody hard. It's still not. It's still a hard thing to do. Yeah, Bobby's smiling. He knows. It's still not easy, but it's easier than it ever
hard,
has
been. But it's extremely rewarding.
Yes.
You know, for me personally, you know, opening a squat was hands down the best decision, you know, I ever made in my life.
Yeah.
There's not a single day where I walk into this practice and I don't regret it. You know, it was just, you know, just that ability to create something from scratch. You know, and when you've got your own patients coming in and you're treating them the way that you want and you've built this place for them, and you know, you're looking after them, you know, to know that you've built that, you know, there's no greater feeling, you know, when you start getting this feedback. And then obviously the financial rewards come, you know, with time. But it's definitely, you know, it's one of the hardest things you can ever do, but it's definitely, you know, one of the most rewarding things that you can do in dentistry as well.
Yeah, totally. From that point of view, it's something that's well worth it. And for me, I mean, I've never set up a squat dental practice, but I've started lots of other businesses and having a blank piece of paper and then 3, 6, 9 months in, ending up with something that's living and breathing and alive. It is so exciting because, as you say, you get to deliver your vision. You don't inherit somebody else's.
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. I totally agree. And you get to put your own touch to it as well. You've got nice, fresh staff members. You've got nice, fresh patients. You can control everything that's going on, but it does have a scary element to it as well, because you're just like, at the end of the month, have we done what we were supposed to in order to break even? Have we gone down? Have we got up? So I think that's the only scariest part, but it is quite rewarding, to be honest.
But just go back to what Bobby said as well. It's a really important point. Is if you think this is a get rich quick scheme, don't do it. No. Just work as an associate, because it's going to be hard and it's going to be painful for a period of time, and the rewards will come, but they're not immediate. So you need to really think through a reason beyond it being about money why you're doing this, and that has to be your start point. Why are you doing this? And money's not a great reason to do it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
big
I think
financial reward is going to be in the asset value that you're creating.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
never going to realize that until you sell your practice, and you never know when that's going to be. But
Yeah.
you know, you can't see that at this age. So it's exactly right what you said. It's not for everybody, but if you've got it in you, then go for it.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. I think it has been an absolutely amazing webinar. There's been so many useful. I've learned a lot today. Even though I've opened 2 squat practices, I think if I open a 3rd one, it would be a lot more smoother and better this time. So I've learned a lot. Thank you everyone for joining us. I really, really appreciate everybody's time. Just before we go, we've got one last question. What are your views on having launch parties?
I'm up for that.
I love parties.
I love parties as well. So I think personally, we done one just in Leeds. We done quite a big one where we called some musicians. We had some supercars and things like that. I absolutely love parties, and I think it's really nice way to market, because not only you can call all your surrounding neighbors and businesses and things like that, but you can get some really nice content for social media. So I'm up for launch parties, but I do think though that you need to market them correctly, and you need to have a plan for on the day what you're doing. So I'll share something that we done like a live composite bonding case on the day, on a model, and that was really cool because we've got a lot of universities in Leeds that was surrounding us, so a lot of students came in to watch the live composite bonding case, and that's how we got some new patients as well. So I think planning them correctly, because they can be a bit costly, and knowing what you want out of them is the most important thing. What do you guys think?
I agree.
I agree. I've been to a few as a guest, and for me, it's exactly what you said. It's not just a party; it's a marketing activity. So you have to plan it in and schedule it as a marketing event, and know what you're going to spend, what's your budget, who you're targeting, what are the outcomes.
Yeah.
So you plan it as an event. It's not just something to get excited about, and it's a party. It's part of your marketing plan. But I think done well, I think you can get great local PR coverage from it. I think there's loads of benefits, but you need to know why you're doing it, as opposed to it's just a party.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Totally agree.
Did you have one,
thank you.
Bobby, out of interest? But Bobby, just quickly, when you opened,
Yeah.
did you have a
Yeah,
bunch
we
of
did.
sorts?
It was great. And the funniest thing about that day was what got us the most amount of new patients that day was putting a massive black and gold balloon arch over our front door, because we're on a corner site, we're quite prominent. So all afternoon after the party, the phone was ringing. Oh, we saw your balloons. Are you open now?
Oh wow!
Yeah, crazy. But yeah,
Smart.
we had local press coverage. We were in the papers, and it's all great, and all that stuff's great for your SEO as well.
Yeah. Okie doke. So thank you so much everyone for joining. And as I said, if there is, somebody said great webinar. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, guys. Much appreciated. So if there are any more questions, this webinar is recorded. We're going to put it on YouTube. We're going to put it on all the social media. We have got a landing page ready where we're going to put this webinar as well. So everything, it will be all available for everybody to watch. And we'll send it out to you guys as well if you want to share it, like, subscribe, whatever you need to do on YouTube. And again, if you have any questions, Andy, Frank Taylor Associate, I will put all his information. Same, we've got Murray from Anglian Dental, Bobby from Squat Success, and myself from Smart Dental Compliance and Training. If you want to get in contact with us, I'll put all the information where I upload all these videos, and you can get in touch with any one of us. And thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you spending the time to come in and share lovely tips for all other viewers. I hope you guys have a lovely week, and thanks once again for joining us.
Lovely. Thanks for the invite, Saba. Keep well, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.